For as we start this road, this journey to Calvary, over the next few weeks we'll be looking at the words of Christ on the cross. Starting off this morning with the very words that Christ said, "Why have you forsaken me?" Our reading this morning is from Matthew 27, verse 37 to 43 and verses thereafter. And it reads as follows. For above Jesus' head, they placed the written charge against him. This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. Now 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. But those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "You are going to destroy the temple and build it up in 3 days. Save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." For in the same way the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders mocked him. He saved others, they said, but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Well, let him come down from the cross, and we will believe in him. For he trusts in God. Let God rescue him if he wants him. For he said, "I am the Son of God." This is the word of God. Thanks be to him. I don't think we could even imagine, grapple, contemplate, even fathom the extent of Jesus on the cross. In this day and age, certainly in the Western world, you do not see people crucified. You don't see people executed in public. You don't see heads chopped off. You don't see hands chopped off. You don't see folk beaten up unless they've been to the bar in a brawl and had a fight. Unless you've been in a contact situation where you've seen someone really mangled up in an accident or something like that, you and I, other than what we see on TV and the movies, have no concept of what it is to have your body beaten up, abused, misused in such a way that you can't even recognize whether it's a human being on a cross or not. I mean, just imagine Jesus' death. It didn't start on the cross. It wasn't just being nailed and the pain and the anguish that goes to that, because for most of us, it would kill us. The shock would kill us. But the lashings. I mean, every time that whip came down on his back, it tore out skin and flesh. It rips it out. There was a wonderful program on television looking at some of the biblical events. And they went and recreated that lash, that whip, the way the Romans designed it. And they took a pig carcass and they gave it 39 lashes. You know, pig skin is thicker than yours, eh? And mine. You cannot believe how it, from the very first one, began to tear out chunks of flesh. It is believed that more than likely his back and the ribs were all exposed. I mean, the beatings, the clapping, the crown of thorns. We have this picture of Jesus carrying a cross, falling a few times. I mean, that thing didn't weigh 5 kilos or 10 kilos. He didn't fall onto a well beautifully padded little playground floor. There was no first aid to run along and say, well, let's just wipe the blood and get the scene looking good and keeping it nice. And then there's the cross. And everyone's having their 2 cents worth. But little did they know, little did they realize when they said those words, he trusts in God, how true those words are. Where is your God now? Where is your God now? For if he trusts in God, or he trusts in God, you know, it's easy to believe in God when everything's hunky-dory. It's easy to believe in God when everything's going according to plan. I mean, we've all got plans in life. We've all got, dates and events and things we want to take place in life. And when they start working out and everything's moving in a great motion and there are no hiccups, no tornadoes, no whirlwinds, nothing that causes a stumbling block, it's easy to believe in God. But what happens when your world begins to fall apart? What happens when things begin to unravel? What happens when you suddenly hear the news? You have 3 months to live. What happens when you hear the news? It's all over. What happens when you hear the news? This is your last paycheck. What happens in your world and my world when things are no longer within our control? Are we still able to believe in the same God, the same Jesus, the way we did when everything was going hunky-dory? It's easy to trust when all is well. But when the challenges come, I think many of us sing a very different story. But the text continues in verse 45 to verse 46. From the 6th hour until the 9th hour, darkness came over all of the land. For about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? You can only imagine. And this is the question that theologians have, and I'm no theologian, I'm just the old Andre. But the theologians have is when God calls out to God and says to himself, where are you? I mean, imagine the depths of despair. Everything that human beings did to Jesus, nowhere do you see recorded anywhere that Jesus complained. But in this one moment, this final moment, he calls out and says, God, where are you? If there was a simple, easy answer, I would love to give it to you today, but I believe it's a search and a quest for all of us, for all of our days. Because in those moments when we are challenged and life is at its most challenging, and when life seems unfair and things seem cruel, we ask the question, Lord, where are you? And I believe every one of us has a story to tell. Of that one moment, or those 2 moments, or those many moments where you have felt so lonely and so empty, so left alone, wondering, is there any truth to this? I remember a good number of years ago, some 20 odd years ago, fresh in the ministry, new. It wasn't like we were married, it was just like we were going out, because I was in Soweto 2 days a week and then home for a couple of days. It was lekker. We got to the end of the year, and with a friend of mine, or a friend of ours, Anna-Marie and mine, we planned on going down to the Cape. We were going to go and see the Cape. And so the 3 of us put our money together and we saved for a little while, and we took the road down to the Cape. Beautiful. Stopped over in Colesberg, had a lekker night, enjoying some lekker soet rooi, nice, beautiful muscadel. I mean, delicious, chatting to the lady in there, went along to restaurants, ate. We carried on. Yes, I do drink a glass of wine. There's some shock here, I see. Yes, I do. Because if I don't, then you guys are going to be all fraught. So we carried on and we went down the Hexrivier and we went to look at the Simonsberg and the goats over there, and oh, wonderful. But as we drove along, Anna-Marie wanted to eat less and less. And it was okay for Wessel and myself, because the less she ate, the more we could pile in. And especially around the morning, she wasn't feeling so lekker. But we carried on, eventually got into Cape Town itself and went and stayed with family of mine. And in the morning, she wanted to sleep in a little bit longer, and she wasn't feeling all so hot and so bright. But in the evenings, it was fine, it was good, it was great. And we carried on. About 3 weeks later, we moved up to a little place called Struisbaai. Ever been there? Beautiful little place. And while we were there, Anna-Marie went to the folk we were staying with. And this lady worked with me when I was a policeman. She was our secretary. And Anna-Marie said to her, don't you have any nausea pills? She says, yeah, no, I do, but do you want them now? So Anna says, no, in the mornings. I really don't feel lekker in the mornings. And I'll tell you, Doreen, as wonderful as she is, didn't have much tact because her first words were, my kind, jy's op die paal. In other words, you're pregnant. No, how can that be? Never. How could that ever take place? Couldn't be pregnant. You know, when you go into denial mode. No, no. Well, we decided we would cut the holiday a little short, and we went back home. But on the way back, we broke out in this terrible rash. I mean, all over, itchy and red and hot and temperature. And we thought, well, maybe it was the prickly pears we bought somewhere around Colesberg. Maybe you should touch them and, took antihistamines but didn't take any of the itch away. It just carried on, and it got worse and worse all over our body. And this temperature. We decided we needed to go and see the doctor. We needed to go and confirm that she was pregnant and maybe check what this itch is. I didn't know that pregnancy came with an itch. Well, we went along to the doctor, and I remember it being the 22nd of December. We went along to the doctor, and he did a little test and said, good news, yes, you are pregnant, but there's a bit of a problem. You've got German measles. The shock that goes with that. An appointment was then made. We needed to go and see a gynecologist, which was for the next day. So no, it wasn't the next day, it was the 24th. We got in to go and see the gynecologist, and he confirmed the pregnancy. But he said, I need to leave the two of you together because you need to terminate this pregnancy. What? Do what? Terminate your pregnancy. It wasn't an option for us. Not because of religion or anything. It wasn't an option. Because the impossible is possible. And I remember getting into church that next morning, and it was Christmas morning. And I had to preach a message that I prepared before I went away. Have you received the gift that you were expecting? I learned there that you can stand up and you can be a fraud. You can stand up in front of people and you can tell them stories, you can make them feel good, you can get folk laughing, but not believe a single word that you say. Because I sure as heck did not receive the gift I was expecting. And I remember going home and us grappling. We just sat in that house and existed. And I remember our families came across. And we decided we were going to give things a bash. And I remember that first month we went along to the gynae and everything looked okay because the little one was growing and everything that they told us wouldn't happen seemed to be happening. All the good stuff seemed to be taking place. And we were going every 2 weeks for a scan and a checkup. And then we got up to about 6 months and everything was looking dandy and sharp and good and shanana. And so they said, well, every month. And then it came along to that last little stretch. Hey, the excitement of going along was, I sort of avoided trying to go along to the gynaes because, yeah. But I remember we went along for the last checkup before delivery. And when you get there and you get into the gynae's rooms and he takes out that jelly stuff and he says to you, lay on the bed, and you lay on the bed and pull up your tummy and stands out just like mine, same portfolio. And they put on that gel and they say, it won't be cold, flip. You ladies know how it goes. And they put it on and it starts to work over the tummy and you watch on that screen, wow. There those little arms are. And there those little feet are. And those little legs. And there's a little body. And then he moves along a bit more. And there's a head. And there's a jaw. Wow. And he carries on looking a bit more. And he moves the probe and checks a bit more. And you watch his face begin to change. And he says to you, there's no heartbeat. I remember us, Anna-Marie getting up off that table, us going home. I dropped her off and her friend, and I got in the car, and I drove. I told God he could take his church, he could take his faith, He could take his word and everything, and I would buy him a Vaseline factory if I had to. And he could take it and he could stick it. And I'm telling you now because I'm being real with you. I'm not talking to you with someone, that's why I haven't got a collar on now. I was real with God. I told him he could take it and stick it. How could a God who's so loving and caring, who calls someone into the ministry, a family into the ministry, and go and totally stuff up their lives? How can he take where you're working in a place where you got more money, you're successful, everything's working, and Laka calls you into a place where there's sweet nothing, fanny apple blow or nothing. We didn't have a home, we didn't have a house, we stayed in someone else's. The beginning of the ministry was an adventure and a half. There were fountains pushing through the lounge floors, no lies. And then God goes, you're telling me to slow down. And then God goes and does this. For us, our world just crumbled. And I think in some senses, it's never been the same again. At that moment, and I'm sure Anna Marie she can share her own feelings with you, but for me, I had maybe the minutest inkling of what Jesus must have thought and what Jesus did say. Father, where are you? Why have you forsaken me? What did I do to you that you did this to me? It was the first time that your entire faith comes to crunch time. I tried to resign, but fortunately, my superintendent didn't allow me to. You see, it was only down the line I came to realize, and today I can stand and I can talk and I can share. At that moment in my pain and the suffering and in loss, I was only able to see one part of a story. A story which in that moment made no sense, which defied human logic, but yet a story that today reminds me of God's presence. When we look at Jesus on Calvary, and maybe for the first time, it doesn't add up and it doesn't make sense. How could God allow himself to be put on a cross and die the way he did? You see, if you stopped listening to the story on Good Friday, many of us would walk away with no hope, no chance, no opportunity, no possibility that there could be a tomorrow. But the fact is, the story continues. And if you're able to endure the pain and the suffering that comes with that loss, with that grief, with the pain, with death, there is a promise of a new tomorrow. There is a promise of a new day. There's a promise of new hope. And that hope and promise comes from someone called Jesus Christ. You see, I've got to learn something, that God didn't come around and decide, well, today, Andre and Anna Marie, it's your day. You're going to test your faith and see how good and strong you are. That isn't the God we serve. God isn't the one who says, well, your time has run out on the clock. Take him out in an accident. You're going to take a highway. You're not going to make it, boyki. Ta-la. Send the angels down. They'll fetch him. That isn't the God we serve. But that's the way we talk, don't we? You see, this God we serve, I believe, is ever the opportunist, and I say that with respect. God has put a natural course of events into place in this world that we live in. The seasons, the change. And he maybe made one mistake, and that was giving us free choice. Because in our free choice, we blow it. In our free choice, we ruin it. In our free choice, we affect the lives of others. But thank God for free choice, because we can choose him. I came to realize that we had done nothing wrong. I wasn't a bad person. Anna Marie wasn't a bad person. She worked at a school. There was a mom who had a kiddie who she didn't know had German measles, brought the kid to school, Had no idea. We didn't know Anne-Marie was pregnant. There was a natural course of events that took place. Many years later, we can look at it and say, we now know what happened. We still don't know why it happened. And that's a question I believe will remain with all of us, in all of our grief, and all of our pain, and all of our loss. And I want to say to you, there is no magic answer out there. There isn't. You'll only get frustrated and rattled trying to find it. But what I do know, and what I believe Christ calls us to remember when we don't understand, is first and foremost that the God we serve is good. That the God we serve is faithful. That the God we serve transcends our circumstances. And I believe does not inflict those circumstances on us. That in the grand scheme of things, if this was a timeline, this life is but only a pinprick in this long journey, yet it's filled and wracked with emotion and pain. But also with joy and with hope, with peace and with happiness. For Mark 10 verse 18 says to us, no one is good except God alone. It is in our pain that we flee and we run to God. That God doesn't allow us to run away. God doesn't allow us to escape. It's like trying to run away from a shadow. Ever try to do it? Maybe give it a bash today. It's a beautiful sunny day. I can remember when my oldest son, Philip, became aware of his shadow for the first time. Walking around, playing under the trees, and then he went into a sunny spot, and he noticed suddenly there was something following him. We heard the scream. We had just moved into a new house. We heard the scream. I thought, what on earth? Came running out looking, what is going on? He discovered he had a shadow. And the more he tried to hide and run away from the shadow, this thing followed him. No matter where he went, this thing tagged him. Until he got under the trees. It's gone, Dad. It's gone, Dad. And then he gets into the sun, screaming. And I had to say to him, you know what, Phil, we've all got one. It's called a shadow. It's no one. It's a shadow. And we can try and run away from this God of ours. But it's like the shadow that tags you. You cannot escape God. For God is good, in spite of the circumstances. Another thing I discovered in the pain and the hurt was that God is for me. For Scripture says, if God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own son, but gave him for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? God is not against you. God is for you. Some of us sitting over here it might have been ages since we've heard the words, I love you. But you know what? Every morning God sends us. How many of you guys were up early this morning? How early? How early? What's early to you? 6. That's late. That's late. Well, I was up this morning pretty early. And I went and sat outside. You know, the most amazing, we have this little forest, little jungle at the back of the manse, in our back garden. And there were the most beautiful little birds. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them, just singing their songs. And then to watch those colors in the sky begin to just come over, and the sky begin to change color. And you just know, in all of that, God whispering to you and to me to say to us, hello, I'm here. And then when you look out at night and you see the stars and you see the moon and you see the shooting stars. Oh, man, you go along, and how about you before you go home today? Take a drive to the beach, please. Take a drive and just go and watch the waves, because half of you don't even know that they exist anymore, even though you live on the coast. Go and listen to those waves. Close your eyes and listen to those waves pounding. Listen to the rhythm of the waves. Take a walk on the beach and feel the sand on your feet, and you'll be reminded God says to you, I am with you. I love you. For God is not just good, but God is for us. God is with us. No matter how Philip tried to hide from that shadow, he could not shake it. This God we serve is with us. He is deep within us. to transform us from the inside out, to change our thoughts, to change our hearts. You know, and I've come to realize this. The better I get to know this God I call Abba Father, the less I ask why. And the more I ask, Lord, what would you want me to do for you? The deeper this relationship goes, the less I ask why. And the more I ask, Lord, what do you want me to do? God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. We will face challenges, and this road will be rocky. This road will be painful. But at the end of it, it doesn't end on a Friday. It starts on a Sunday. I want to invite you to join me on this walk to Calvary. And then when we finish that walk, to start a new walk on the road to Emmaus, where there are new beginnings in each of our lives because of the one who calls us his children.